And I mean, I've spoken with and met hundreds of companies over the last 2 years in this space, and um, and most of them actually really struggle with how to get started with AI, other than giving their employees access to ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot or something like that. Um, so I would first really go through and look at the opportunities in the organization, like spend time mapping that out with the team, thinking about area by area. Like I actually first looking at, as a CEO, what would be the biggest what are the biggest areas of opportunities to change for as a whole, and then go through those and spend time brainstorming, really invest time up front. How would we redesign this area if we didn't have the legacy that we have today? So I think we also have to be really aware that there's two worlds. There's this AI bubble that we live inside, and it's not necessarily a bubble that will pop, but a bubble in terms of isolation. And then there's the real world. And the big challenge of the next couple of years will be, how do we get those two to try to come together in a way where everybody feels like they're part of it. And one of the things that we've done as part of this is, after experimenting with lots of things, one of the things that I saw was like, all right, so how can we get people to work together with AI? So rather than working in isolation, how can we work as teams to feel that we're learning from each other, that we're working in projects together, that the content, what people are doing, it's part of the company and not part of what you're doing as an individual.
The New Form Podcast.
Hi, I'm Adam Halverson, CEO at Newform, the software development partner that designs, builds, and manages mobile web and AI-powered apps and platforms for growing businesses. Welcome to the Newform Podcast, where I speak with founders, CEOs, and business leaders about technology, digital innovation, and building successful businesses. Today, I'm joined by Magnus Jern. Magnus is an entrepreneur and technology leader with decades of experience building businesses, leading teams, and helping organizations navigate major shifts in technology. Magnus also happened to be my CEO, and is someone that I've learned a huge amount from. So it's brilliant to have him joining the podcast. Today, we'll be discussing how business leaders can lead with AI, how they can inspire their organizations to explore new possibilities, create meaningful business value, and approach the opportunity positively rather than simply viewing AI as a way to replace jobs. Magnus, welcome to the New Form Podcast.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Good to see you. So for those meeting you for the first time, we've worked together for many years, but obviously for people who don't know you, and I don't think there's many people who don't know you, but can you tell us about your background and the journey that's led you where you are today?
Yeah, so I guess I could call myself an AI native because I started working and creating my first chatbot when I was 14 or something like that. And I'm quite old, so this was still in the late 80s. So that's how long ago. There was already talk about AI back then. And then over the years, I've worked in big and small companies, but I guess my most exciting journey getting into the mobile app development space, and just after the iPhone was launched, and building a company called Golden Gecko, which over a 4 or 5 year period turned into one of the biggest mobile app development companies in Europe. And we had the opportunity to work with all of the big global brands like Coca-Cola and Volvo and IKEA and others. So it was a really, really exciting journey. And also in the middle of that, going through the transitions from actually when we very started was Java phones to Symbian phones, then to iPhones, then getting Android, and then starting on the lean UX, human-centric design journey. So many changes during that period. And after about almost 10 years on that journey, I started up a company in the water filtration space, so something completely different, with the purpose of applying my skills from the digital space into the hardware space and see what I could do with that to have impact. And that's also been a fantastic journey. We now sell water filters in, I think, 30 countries, one of the leaders in Southern Europe. But hardware is hard. And so eventually, after selling that business to a Swedish company, Blue Water, I'm back in the AI game since about 2 years. And yeah, that's my short version of the journey. And I'm a technical optimist. I really, really believe in the opportunities of technology for good, for humans, for companies, for governments, for countries. But we need to use the right methodologies to make that happen, and we need to work in the right ways, and we need to work together.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I guess we'll dig deeper into that. I mean, certainly when I worked with you and I guess which was what was it, 10 years or something, we experienced several major technology shifts and obviously we're going to get into AI and you've already mentioned it. But we've seen some big technology shifts over the years. How do you think that the arrival of well, I guess we're not in the arrival stages anymore, but the arrival of AI compares to the other shifts that we've seen?
I mean, to be fair, maybe we are actually still in the arrival stage. I think we're in a very early stage of this transition. Probably like similar to like the internet around 97, 98, something like that. Then obviously that's not a very good indicator if you think that there's going to be a boom and bust. But let's forget about that for now. But yeah, and obviously it turned out that most of the successful companies, like the businesses that were built, were actually, they succeeded 10 years later. It was not very easy back then. It was a few survivors like Amazon that managed to plow through. But the reality is that it took time for the monetization to happen. Now, this time, I think that is actually very different because we're seeing monetization happening almost immediately. We're seeing benefits to companies almost immediately. And that's a huge shift if you look at the past. And it's obviously interesting to see that it happened. And I think this was a bit unexpected that it happened in coding first. So we see it especially in tech companies is where the biggest impact is coming. Whereas if you look outside of that, I don't think the companies are seeing that much yet. And so that's a big opportunity. But yeah, this is the biggest. I mean, my belief at least is that this is a much bigger shift than both the internet and the mobile technology and all of the others. Probably as big as the computer from the beginning. That's my view.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Um, and moving into leading with AI, which is sort of going to be the a big part of our discussion. So for you, what does it actually mean for a founder or CEO to lead with AI?
Yeah, so I guess first, if we start with why is this important? If we're looking right now and like where we are in the AI journey, I mean I've spoken with and met hundreds of companies over the last 2 years in this space, and um, and most of them actually really struggle with how to get started with AI, other than giving their employees access to ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot or something like that. So they see, they see individuals getting really good at using certain tools, and that increases the productivity of the individuals. They see that some of their tools are getting better thanks to AI. So AI is now built into, whether it's Shopify or it's Basecamp or whatever tool or Salesforce, whatever tool you're using, they all have built-in AI capabilities. But if you look at it from like a business organization point of view, that doesn't really do that much. It doesn't change your company. It doesn't transform your company. And so some companies then look at, okay, I need to hire an AI savvy person to help me with this. or I need to appoint someone within the company to help me with this. And that doesn't really work, especially if it's technologists, because they think like technologists. And so to think like if you want to transform your business, the only person that can really do that, I think, is the CEO, the founder, the person that is like the energy, the idea, everything inside the business. So that is really the starting point. And that's hard because and I was just speaking a couple of weeks ago with someone that is the CEO of a company with 65,000 employees. So that's a big company. And I said, so how are you doing with your AI journey? And he was like, yeah, I've now spoken to 15 different consultants that are coming in telling me that they can do our AI transformation. And then I asked them, so can you tell me what you've done for other companies that have transformed them? And the answer is they can't. Like they come up with technical use cases. Oh, we automated customer service. That's the most typical customers. Like we put in chatbots basically.
Yeah.
But the experience of really transforming companies is very limited because we've only had 1.5, 2 years to do any of this. And so then he's like, so what am I supposed to do then? He's like, then I'm reading that, I have to spend half my time doing AI. He's like, where am I supposed to get that half time? Is that the time that I'm sleeping?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a tough thing because it's not like it removes other things to start with. It just adds additional effort. But I think what we are seeing though is that the CEOs that spend, even if it's just a couple of hours per week, playing, learning, testing tools, they are the ones that are leading. They're the ones that are getting teams with them. Like they show them. So if you take Toby at Shopify, he prototyped some solutions with vibe coding tools, and then you could say, like, why would the CEO do that? Like, why does that make sense? Because by doing that, he's just showing his team that he's using these tools themselves. So that inspires his employees to think the same way. Like, when I'm going to prototype something, yeah, that's a great way of doing it. So I think that is the starting point. The other thing related to this is that just taking the processes, the workflows, the things that you have today and automating them is generally a bad idea because you're typically taking something that has, yeah, it works, but maybe it's been broken for the last 10 years. So if you take expense management or something related to supply chain, often it's a process that has been built on, repaired. Nobody really likes it, but it works with SAP, it works with Oracle, or it works with your ERP. And if you just take that and try to put automated with AI, you're just automating something that is not going to get any better. It's just going to be automated in the same bad way. So what you really want to do there is rethink. If we didn't have anything today, how would we build it? And I think a lot of the time, the only person that can actually do that, if especially in smaller companies, is typically the CEO. Like if the CEO can show examples of that to their management team, how he thinks about how to leverage AI for the overall organization, then he can put that mindset into his direct reports, into the teams, and then they can start doing the same. And when they do that, then you get true transformation.
Super interesting. And I guess for me, I've had conversations very similar. And I guess I see that there's two sides to it. One, which is I think a lot of leaders are looking for a silver bullet, like some kind of offering, which is an out of the box kind of productized thing, which they can just kind of sign off on and buy and makes their life easier. And then the second angle is, I was talking to a CEO of a, I don't know, billion revenue business the other day. Um, and he's actively looking for solutions around this. And my suggestion was to sort of take a consultative approach, a human-centric approach. But there seems to be a resistance to want to do that. It seems like fatigue around that to sort of really rediscover effective. So not replace existing workflows, but rediscover them. So what would you, sorry, this is putting you on the spot, but what would you suggest, for a CEO of a business, how would you approach that, to actually, not necessarily take existing workflows and processes, but effectively create new ones?
Yeah, I mean, so I think like Gartner and others have been talking about digital twins now for the last 10 or 15 years. I
Yeah.
can't remember when it came up. And for the first 10 years, I was like, this is just stupid. Like, this is a concept. It's like saying everything is going to be replaced by virtual reality. Uh, but it was a conceptual thing that was very difficult to do. I think now for the first time, it actually makes sense. So the digital twin actually really makes sense. And what it means basically is that instead of repairing things, you start building a separate new infrastructure for your company on the side. And so if you take, and I'm sorry to use the customer service example, but it's just so easy to use. And so if you take that one and you look at, all right, we have 20 people doing customer service today. And the first thing you do is you implement a chatbot, and then you see actually, that's just making customers unhappy because they want to talk to humans. But what you do is you set up the separate system, you test it with a limited amount of your customers, and once you get to a point where it's as good or better than the original system, then you do the switchover. You don't do the switchover until then. And I think that is basically the key for most companies because it's very difficult to build on the infrastructure you have. So you have to do that area by area. You start building these digital twins. And then probably what you will realize in the case of customer service that actually, you need as part of it, you need a really good handover to humans. So as soon as people want to speak to a human, they can speak to a human. And that's what happened. Like IKEA did this, and they ended up turning it into a business opportunity because they actually realized that those people that wanted to talk to someone, some of them were even prepared to pay for the support and designing their kitchen or the thinking about their house. So they actually turned that into as consultancy business for IKEA. So I think there's a huge opportunity there.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, you've touched on customer service. What are you seeing though is sort of the biggest opportunities for businesses to use AI to drive growth, improve customer experience, outside of, what are for someone listening, like what are some of those kind of core quick wins that they could look at?
Um, I don't really believe that there's quick wins. I think it's all, I mean, yeah, because the quick wins are normally achieved, like they're not the things that are going to have the big impact. So, if you take quick wins, it's sending 100 times more emails with personalized greetings to people by doing research using AI. And maybe that works for the first couple of months, but eventually that will probably not work. And especially when everybody's doing it, because then suddenly it just means that there's 10, 100 times as many emails being sent to people and nobody's going to respond to them. So the real key there is so if you're looking at sales, is that, all right, if you wanted to be able to reach 10 times more customers as outreach, but with the same quality or better quality than what you have today, how would you do that? So, and then really think through, and I mean, it could be that that actually a lot of customers would accept. Like it could be that it's using WhatsApp channels. Like a lot of people actually prefer chat today versus voice, if you do it in the right way. It could be that it's a very short voice call, and then the customer, like, you help them schedule another call or schedule an online demo or whatever it might be. But you do it in ways where the perception from the customer is that, wow, they're actually improving the experience of what I'm getting from them, and so they're using AI in a positive way. I think that's it. And so you can see that in sales, you can see it in marketing, you can see it, if it's But I mean, there's also areas where we've been trying to do these things for a long time, like to just take retail in-store experiences with digital experiences. We've failed year after year with that. It's hard.
Yeah, yeah. So you've touched on yeah, like where are some of the opportunities? But I mean, where do you feel there is just a lot of hype? Where do you feel that there are kind of red herrings where people are sort of getting trapped in the wrong direction?
Um, I mean, I think one very dangerous thing today is actually vibe coding tools. And it's because on the one hand, they're amazingly good. Like the things that you can do in half an hour with whether it's Lovable, Replit, Cloud Code, etc. in terms of like producing prototypes, it's just incredible. Like and
Yeah, it's amazing.
you can, I mean, you can create something that looks like a copy of Salesforce in an hour. The challenge then is that obviously that is not, it's not Salesforce, but it looks like it.
Yeah,
And the tricky thing about this is that it is so like it is so tempting for people to use these tools, and we see this within organizations to replace existing SaaS licenses to build things. And sometimes, like within large organizations, you see people like developing competing tools. So there could be three people delivering a CRM. Uh, and it's difficult for the CEO to understand this because it's being sold to him like these are genius creating these super powerful tools, just suddenly replacing them, and they show business cases for how much money we're going to save, and now we're going to get our custom version. And then 1 week later, the CEO asks, "Okay, so are we ready to launch?"
yeah,
And then feedback is not yet, not yet. And then 2 weeks later, and then 3 weeks later, and then 4 weeks later, and then like 2, 3 months later, it's still not ready because actually it's very easy to develop a prototype, but it's hard to develop a product. And unfortunately, a lot of organizations have to go through that and see that experience. And I think there's two major issues with it. One is that um, that it's a lot easier to create prototypes than it is to create production hardware. The other part of it is that it's um, is also that it's like you need to think about what's core to your business. Like, should you, so if your company is selling shoes online, should you really develop your own CRM? Like, do you need that? Probably not. Like, is that your moat? No, it's not. It's presenting your shoes in the best way on the website
yeah,
and communicating in the best way. So I think that like there's those two things. And another issue that we see with vibe coding tools is that I mean they're like a drug. Like it is so much fun. You see people sitting up until like they so I mean this is a good thing and a bad thing because what companies are seeing as well is that their employees are working outside of working hours doing these things. And then it's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, then they're sitting up until 2 a.m. in the morning doing this because like just because they think another prompt I will solve it, another prompt I will solve it. Oh,
yeah.
by the way, then I came up with this idea, and then I'm gonna add that. Um, and that's obviously not sustainable for either for humans or for a company. So thinking about these things, and I think it's also dangerous what the and I was speaking. I've been commenting to Lovable specifically. They recently claimed that 30% of the projects were generating revenue. And that's clearly not true. It's like maybe 0.1% of the project prototypes that get developed generate any kind of revenue. I don't like so
Yeah.
there's a lot of challenges in the vibe coding space.
No,
And but
oh,
it's
sorry, go ahead.
also amazingly good. So like I
Yeah,
said before, the CEO should be using it. They should be using it to prototype. They should encourage people to use it, but it should be for prototyping, to test concepts. So instead of spending 3 months developing something and then showing that like and realizing that it doesn't work, you can do it in a day.
absolutely. Yeah, and I want to dig into that a little bit deeper. But it just reminded me, I was talking to a CEO of a 50 million revenue business the other day. They've done quite a lot of big let's say installations of different services like ERP and stuff like that, and their workflows and their user journeys are just all over the place to the point where, yeah, and we've had this conversation before where, do you buy or build? Do you buy off the shelf? And a lot of companies will buy off the shelf, and then you have the kind of usability issues where staff don't want to use it. So he comes to me and he says, "Yeah, I've had a really good idea. I'm going to get everybody to build their own like vibe code, their own solution for the problems that they have."
Mhm.
And like from a pure innovation prototype perspective, I can see that, but I think he genuinely was thinking that this is something that actually the business can roll out. And I was just like, please don't do that because it's going to be a complete mess, and it's like it's not going to be joined up. So with that said,
Now, having said that, I think you can do that as well. So if you look at how, but I mean, this is exceptional case, but if you look at how Anthropic has done it,
yeah,
they've actually enabled going from prototypes into production extremely fast. But then you have some of the best tech people in the world working on their teams. But actually, someone on the finance team that comes up with this like a tool for finance people can go from a prototype to something that goes live with millions of people in 6 weeks.
yeah,
But they built the infrastructure to make that work.
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I guess going back to let's say the 50 million revenue business
Mm.
to the CEO, or maybe not that's like maybe any size. I mean, you know, maybe even sort of enterprise. With all of this said, sort of very high level, what would you say is the kind of right process that they should be following? Not necessarily from a technical perspective, but if you were to sort of suggest, an approach from the ground up, how would that look?
So enabling them to go from prototype to production, you mean?
Yeah, or even from idea to prototype to production.
Mhm. Yeah, so I mean, so what you can do, I guess, is like if you if you really so first of all, you need to have like clear criteria for, and I mean, this is always like I think bigger companies they always have milestone processes, committees that decide what projects are going to move from. They have stage gates that they move between. So that's something that completely exists today. It's
Yeah,
just that they exist in a way where typically everything takes 12 to 18 months.
yeah,
Uh, so I guess first thinking about how could you like if you could shorten that down from 12 to 18 months instead to 3 to 6 months end to end, that would be a huge win for the companies. And thinking like and working together between the IT teams in the organization and the other teams and figuring out. So instead of just saying you cannot take these concepts, like it's still going to take 12 to 18 months to take a concept into production, you challenge your team to say, how do we rethink this? How can we make that happen much faster instead? And then you make the teams work together. And I mean, it can be that because there are obviously also I mean, maybe as an example, you actually provide a framework using Cloud Code or ChatGPT codecs that are used for prototyping, and you have a lab environment that has some sandboxes connected into backend and so on. So you actually enable like a sandbox from the beginning where you can really test even in like with integration with data from systems in a safe way. The interesting thing, if you can do that, then it's going to be much faster than to move from the prototype into production. But that really requires the organization to think that through and to rebuild the infrastructure. And that probably goes back into maybe to the digital twins again, because on a lot of companies it's just not possible because the legacy infrastructure do not allow that to happen for security reasons, for integration reasons, for other things. So yeah, that's definitely one starting point for that.
And I guess for me, what that makes me think about is, and I've been thinking about this since the beginning of AI and since we've been talking to businesses on actually how to make the most of it, is Is it just me, or do you think it's a fair comment to say that not much has actually changed in the past 10 years in terms of how companies innovate? Like, I don't see that AI is actually any different. Like, the processes are still the same, the challenges are still the same. You mentioned sort of organizational siloing and, challenges around legacy tech, and it doesn't actually seem any different to me.
No, technology doesn't solve those things. And it's like we've been going through digital transformation for the last 10, 15 years. So yeah, that's and I think that's also one of the frustrating parts for CEOs, especially seasoned CEOs, because they see that and they just see another huge challenge. And so much of
Yeah.
it is like culture, organizational processes. It's not the technology, it's other things. That to some extent is hard. Yeah. So you're absolutely right in that observation. But it doesn't mean that you can't do it and that you shouldn't do it. You still should, but you will have to
But
make those difficult things.
do you think small to medium businesses, do you think this is a big opportunity for them to start catching up? I guess kind of with the democratization and, do you think they're going to be able, because they're leaner and more agile, do you think they're going to be able to accelerate faster than some of the enterprise kind of size businesses?
It might not be the case actually, because one of the challenges that I see as well is that it's not cheap to do these kind of projects. Like it requires
Yeah.
budget and time and dedication. So like unless you're quite tech savvy company, it's very difficult to do. Whereas if you're a big company, you will have the tech people no matter what, because you have to, which means that you can actually make the investments and you get a much more direct return. Because the more scale, especially when it comes to automation, like if you have 50, 100 people doing the same thing, it's very easy to justify the investment in it. But for a smaller organization, you almost never have that. It's
Yeah,
like
true.
no single person has something that they spend all day on. So typically, it's much more fragmented. And yeah, that's a really big challenge in terms of so like when you start looking in smaller teams of whether it's 10, like 20 to 100 people, like a lot of the time you find maybe two, three really obvious things to work on first, but after that it becomes hard because they're so fragmented.
I totally agree. I think it's a really good point. I mean, the amount of businesses I've spoken to um, who have had a concept turned up with something, prototyped, and then just they're kind of in disbelief that it's going to take them even more time because they've tried to do it on their own. Um, so no, I totally agree.
The other related thing to this is like data integration. Which, like, if you're a completely new business, you don't have that problem. But as soon as you have 5 to 10 years legacy, you have probably like 5, 10, 15, 20 different places where data is stored. So then that becomes your first problem. And
Yeah,
that's,
yeah,
yeah, that's a hard one for small businesses, super hard. And if you
absolutely.
don't do that work, then it's also really hard to build AI on top of it.
Let's sort of put it into practical steps then. I mean, again, we've sort of touched on it to some degree, but if you were advising someone like a CEO right now who wanted to um, embrace AI, what would you encourage them to do over the next 30 to 60 days?
Um, So I would first really go through and look at the opportunities in the organization, like spend time mapping that out with the team, thinking about area by area. Like I actually first looking at, as a CEO, what would be the biggest like what are the biggest areas of opportunities to change for as a whole, and then go through those and spend time brainstorming, really invest time up front. How would we redesign this area if we didn't have the legacy that we have today? And I really do think that that's where you're going to have it's the hardest thing to do, but it's also the best thing to do. and be very careful about consultants coming to sell you like especially autonomous agents and other things, because from what we can see from the data, so like last year was supposed to be the year of the agents, this year is supposed to be the year of the agents, but it's still somewhere like around 90-95% of the autonomous agent projects are not moving from prototype pilots into production. And you could argue that that's fine because it's prototyping, it's MVPs, and they're not supposed to. Um, but but I also think that it's dangerous because it's hard. Like the autonomous agents in particular are really, really hard to do. So if you don't have a well-working, defined process that works in a digital way, like most of the time, it's much better to start from the point where you have human in the loop in the different steps. You push it forward, you learn from that, you see how that's working, and then at some point along the way, you can start to automate it. And we have a great example of this today, which is like how can you use AI to help manage your team? And like this is a nice one for a CEO to do. And it's basically like we built it as a tool for ourselves to start with, and for some of our customers that wanted to try it. But it's each like instead of so one of the things that we learned as managers is that it's really good to have a cadence of just doing weekly reporting. So the best thing you can, even if it just takes time, 10 minutes, having each one of the team members think about what did I accomplish last week? What are my priorities for next week? What are the risks? What are the dependencies that I have? What are the asks from my boss? Write it down, send it off.
Yeah.
And we know that that works. We know that from every company, but it's boring and it's difficult for CEOs to push for that and leaders. And then when people do it, the leader doesn't read it, they don't do anything with it. And this is actually a perfect case for AI because where it's a small innovation, you just put a AI agent, and now I actually think the agent is good, but this is a very simple agent. So this is like a human in the loop process. So each one of the direct reports they get a coach that helps them put in those targets and align it with the company targets. And then it gets reported to the CEO. The AI helps digest the input and align it with what is the company targets, what are the goals for the period, helps create the agenda for the next meeting, the pre-read for the meeting, what topics should be one-on-ones, what should be on the management meeting. And then everybody sees the output of this, which is more efficient meetings. And then it starts going in a loop, because the next week it can remind the people, okay, these were the tasks from the meeting. Have you done them when you report in? So it's a really helpful thing, and it shows that the CEO is taking an initiative to lead with AI. And the more you use tools like this, the more knowledge you build up about the company, about what you're doing, and the more useful it's going to be. And this is like a general thing. If you have employees using ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot in isolation, your company is learning nothing. The employees are learning a lot of things, but the company, nothing. And it's like actually all of the IP is just disappearing into the ether. So just getting that back in and saying, your time for the company belongs to the company. The knowledge you build, we're not going to replace your job. And but we might change the way your job works by this input. We might make it more fun. We can remove things that you don't like. We can get you to do the things that you really wanted to do, your dream projects. You can spend more time on that. So communicating this in a positive way and leveraging that in a positive way, I think that's what a CEO can really do as well to lead, other than these reviews and really looking strategically at what the biggest areas are and brainstorming through those, and then providing people with the tools. So if you want company like the employees to be innovative and show their innovation and do prototyping, yeah, just assign, like say Friday afternoons might not be very productive between 4 to 6 anyway in the afternoon on Fridays. Let's make that the prototyping hour, or let's make it, which could be apps or agents or web or whatever. Do things like if you do things like that, that's helpful, and get people to share the knowledge and insights, and get them to be proud about it. And that I think is really, really important.
I think that's amazing insight. I've always wondered why is it so difficult for especially larger organizations to do that? Because it sounds really simple. And I think if, for example, as an agency, if we were to go in with a business, the first thing that we would want to suggest is exactly that kind of, cross-company integration, remove as many of the silos and go top down, but sort of bottom up as well. Why is it so difficult? You think is it a priority thing? Is it a budget thing? Is it, why is it always met with so much resistance?
People don't want change. Like nobody wants change. We like the things how they work. We're still like small small little children when, when it can be anything that changes in your daily routine. We just don't like it. We're comfortable where we are, and that's it. I don't think there's any, and then I mean another big thing as well, obviously, like specifically with AI, it's been so badly communicated by the leaders in the space because the first thing they said was that everybody's going to lose their jobs.
I was going to come to that. Yeah,
Yeah. And now they've completely changed the story. And I mean, to me, it's a bit, it's a bit questionable. How can it be that from one month to another, every single one of the AI leaders, whether it's Sam Altman or Elon Musk or the Anthropic CEO, they all now say, no, actually, you know what, AI is not like jobs are not going to disappear. There's going to be more jobs.
well, I mean,
And I mean, I don't want to have no like it's has no purpose of discussing that because we just don't know. I mean, the thing is, we don't know. The data today shows nothing. Like we just do not know. There's too much. So we will find out in 5 years how things went. And normally there will be areas where, and that's also what you have to be careful about because even though I'm a technology optimist and I think the end result is going to be great for society as a whole, there's also a lot of individuals that are going to be left behind. And we've seen that in other big transitions in the past. Like you just take the boat building industry, like massive ships or shipbuilding. In the areas, like there were towns, probably like in the UK, there were towns in Sweden that were major shipbuilding towns. And then in the like 80s, the Koreans just became so much better, so much more efficient in building ships that the only way to continue to sustain this industry was for the government to subsidize it. And the government said, we can't continue with this. Like it makes no sense. And suddenly in these towns, tens of thousands of jobs got lost. But if you look at the country as a whole, there were more jobs at the end of that period. It was just that certain areas, certain towns got really badly impacted, and we have to be prepared to take care of that. But I think that's probably outside of the topic of this podcast.
so with regards to sort of what you're doing next, I know you've got a few projects in the pipe, which I think you can talk about maybe, which I guess you have P30, which I think is in flight.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, so I've basically been spending the last 2.5, 3 years experimenting in different areas with AI, and as you've experienced as well. In the beginning of that period, everything kind of failed, and then beginning of 2025, it was suddenly starting to work, and at the end of 2025, it was like wow, and then beginning of this year was like I'm blown away.
Yeah.
And as a developer, like software engineer, which is my background, I was like, this changes everything in software development. But then you look outside, or you walk you through the streets of your town, and it changes nothing. So I think we also have to be really aware that there's two worlds. There's this AI bubble that we live inside, and it's not necessarily a bubble that will pop, but a bubble in terms of isolation. And then there's the real world. And the big challenge over the next couple of years will be how do we get those two to try to come together in a way where everybody feels like they're part of it. Um, and one of the things that we've done as part of this is like after experimenting with lots of things, one of the things that I saw was like, all right, so how can we get people to work together with AI? So rather than working in isolation, how can we work as teams to feel that we're learning from each other, that we're working in projects together, that the content, what people are doing, it's part of the company and not part of what you're doing as an individual. So we built P30, which was originally inspired by Productivity 3.0, but it can mean whatever we want today. And we built that as a collaboration tool. So that's available today on p30.ai. And then on top of this, based on input from CEOs and our own pilots, we started building systems on top of this that help companies like experiment and use AI in different ways. And one of these examples is what we call the leadership engine, which is this solution to help managers or CEOs manage their teams using AI and remove or improve the administrative tasks of it, like reporting and agendas and meetings and all of these things. And then building on that over time. And we've done the same thing with project management, just seeing for people that are not project managers, how can you help them become a great project manager? So, because a lot, especially in smaller companies, people end up being project managers, not a role that they've chosen. It's typically, the CEO or the leader or manager says someone needs to lead this project. And the person is like, I don't know what project management is. I've never used Asana or Jira or Trello or Basecamp. But how can you help those people to become a great project manager? And I think actually AI is super good at that. It's
Yeah.
excellent at that because it's so disciplined. And this is what we kind of like. We need to look at areas where like the great thing about computers is that they never get tired, they never get bored. They will keep on doing the things week after week after week that we as humans don't like. And we should make use of that. Like that's what we should really use AI for. And so yeah, that's one of the things that you can do with our P30 tool today. So yeah, if you're interested in it, just go to the website and ask for a demo, and we'll run through it.
Amazing, Magnus. I mean, as always, I think you have an amazing way of giving really practical advice in easy to understand ways. Well, you've mentioned P30 as well. Where else can people find you if they need to?
Yeah, so I'm quite active on LinkedIn. I try to share my honest thoughts and truths, even though I know a lot of people disagree with them or they find them uncomfortable and they don't want to agree with them. Uh, but I would also say actually like LinkedIn and Twitter or an X are really dangerous places today, and YouTube as well, because there's just so much hype. There's so many people selling things, and I think most of it is like it's not going to help you. So actually, it's better that you spend time, reach out to people like Adam, talk to him about your ideas. So what you want to do, like that's where you're going to learn. That's where you're going to get find people that are not trying to sell you something, but that are trying to help you succeed with whatever you want to succeed. And talk to lots of people. Don't believe in the opinion of one person.
Yeah, no, it's good advice. And I guess to finish, I mean, one of the things I always look at every year I wait for your trends decks. I know that a lot of people do. What do you think what's your kind of big bet for, let's say, the rest of the year or the next year?
I mean, this is the interesting thing as well. If you look in our space, even if we stopped development of AI completely for the next 5 to 10 years, there's so much we can do with the technology that we have today. And I think that's really important to think about. It's like, don't look at the next hype. Actually, look at all of the capabilities that we have today because there's just so much we can do with it. And I think that should be your starting point. Don't look out at the next big hype. Don't read. I mean, like quantum computing, it's probably not going to impact most companies in the next 5 years. So, don't worry about it. Look at what is out there today and make the most out of that. And really make use of proven methodologies like Lean UX because they work. Like they've been proven year after year. So, like just listen to this and follow it. So that's it.
So Look, all I can say is thanks so much, Magnus. This is the first of New Form's podcast, and it's amazing to have you as the first guest. So, yeah, really appreciate it, and thanks so much for the insight.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
The New Form podcast